What the Tech is brought to you by HelloFresh.com. Receive $30 off your first week of deliveries when you go to HelloFresh.com and use the offer code Andrew30. Remember, go to HelloFresh.com and use the offer code Andrew30 to get $30 off your first week of deliveries. Thank you to HelloFresh.
What the Tech?
Everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarin. Of course, I'm joined by the one, the only, Mr. Paul at the Rod. Paul, how are you? Perfect timing.
Pretty good. Well, not really pretty good.
Terrible
pretty
Red
sick.
Sox mug.
Terrible? It's
terrible.
a nice one.
Well, they're terrible. You know what
are they?
You know what you could do,
Are
Paul?
they terrible
Maybe,
or are they in first place? I can't recall.
Well, terrible for me. Well, actually, I don't care because I'm a Mets fan, so we're always terrible. I'm using my my Tharot mug today. Look at this.
Nice. Do I have
Everything that you drink out of here tastes like disapproval.
That's right. That's right. This tastes bitter.
Everything.
Why is the water bitter? I've never had bitter water before.
You're drinking it out of a Tharot mug, guys. Guys, we do have a lot to talk about today. Paul was at Ignite. We're going to talk about that. Microsoft October announcements. Amazon hardware announcements. A few details on the Windows 10s first line workers.
Yep. See, I like that you paused over that because it's a weird word.
It is a weird word. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it. And a whole lot more. It's been such a crazy week and so many crazy announcements. And I'm going to an event tomorrow next week that I'm not sure I can mention too much about, but I'll have some detail on that in the coming days. But we have so much to talk about. But before we do, let's take a moment and talk about a new sponsor, a new supporter of the show. And Paul, this is awesome because I am a big HelloFresh fan. Okay, so something that you and I have connected on for a while now is our love for food and alcohol and drinking. And
Sure.
I think they go hand in hand. Something that I do all the time, and I know you and Stephanie are really into, it's cooking and drinking wine. You know, and I make an event out of eating, and I make it a event cooking. I genuinely enjoy cooking at home. You know, I make it like a fun thing. We put on the music, we're drinking, we're eating, we're doing this whole thing, and you could experience this amazing meal, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in detail. Thanks to HelloFresh.com, obviously they're supporting the show. You receive $30 off your first week of delivery when you go to HelloFresh.com and use the offer code Andrew30. Remember, HelloFresh.com and use the offer code Andrew30 for $30 off your first week of delivery. So some of the awesome things is that each week HelloFresh creates these new unbelievable recipes and with step-by-step instructions. It's foolproof. You don't have to be this unbelievable cook, or you don't have to have the abilities of a fine dining chef. These meals that they put together are not only unbelievably delicious, they vary in different types of things. You kind of venture out into stuff that you normally wouldn't eat. You know, we made pork the other day, and it was by far the best thing I've ever made at home. It was unbelievable. They came out to about $10, less than $10 each meal, per meal, which is great. Everything is delivered to your doorstep, makes it super easy. HelloFresh sources you with the freshest ingredients measured to the exact quantity needed, so you're not wasting any food, and you're not doing these crazy measurements to try to figure out how it works. Each meal takes about 30 minutes. And this is a great experience for all of us to try. Guys, I highly recommend this. This is also a great gift. I've been giving these out for a while. My wife's cousin got married, and she bought this house, a house, not this house. She bought a house with her husband, and they were just so crazy with the way that everything was going. And she was on the phone with my wife, and she's like, we rarely go out and, go to dinners, and we always, cooking the same thing. My wife sent over a HelloFresh. And they absolutely loved it. HelloFresh.com. Use the promo code Andrew30 at checkout. You get $30 off your first week of delivery when you use our code. HelloFresh.com, everybody. Paul?
Yes, sir.
You are fresh, but you're fresh in the sense of you just snap back with comments. That's how you are. You're fresh that way.
I am fresh.
Let's talk about Ignite. How was it?
It was good. It was a big show.
Yeah. What did we learn?
What did we learn?
Yeah.
Jeez. Microsoft was really pushing at what I view as the future of the company, which is kind of the cloud, AI, machine learning, and now quantum computing type capabilities that I think really differentiate Microsoft from the competition. And it's one of those weird transitionary things. I think a lot of us still think of Microsoft as the Windows company, and it makes Windows still, but that's kind of the past, and the future of Microsoft was kind of on full display, I would say, at Ignite.
Yeah. They've obviously determined what direction they're headed in, and you could kind of see some of this playing out over the last couple of years. But now, what is the end goal here? I know that there's so many different variables when it comes to this company and the direction that they're taking. Direction with enterprise, direction with consumer, direction with education. Did it kind of clarify where Microsoft is kind of projecting to be in 2 years?
I don't know that they were that specific. I
guess you could read between the lines, right?
Yeah, right. Right. I'm trying to think, because they also provided some guidance on how they were going to support on-prem customers and hybrid customers for the near future. Yeah. But they made it very clear, that this is the future. So if you think about something like Office 2019, which they announced, this is their on-prem version of Office. Which includes the Office suite, includes a couple of servers that companies can put into their own data centers. This is stuff they were basically like, look, if you're on Office 365, you already have all this stuff today. We're just going to package it up and give it to these Luddites a year from now. So, they're going to keep supporting it, but, they're putting all of their effort into the cloud stuff.
Yeah, especially, so Bing for work, for example, how you could search your work, local work documents through Bing now?
Yeah, and actually, I thought that one was pretty cool. It sounds dumb, like...
Well, Google did this a while ago.
I don't know how Google... I don't... Someone else mentioned something about this. I don't recall that, but this is just using their Microsoft Graph technology, they can integrate with their back-end systems. And so you can type a query in that might return results from your HR department, right? Or from your backend SharePoint, or from LinkedIn, depending on what you search for. You'll still see normal internet results after that, but the work-related stuff will be right up front. And that's, that seems like kind of a smart idea.
Yeah. I was very interested. A lot of positive feedback over Ignite from the people who went this year. Lots going on. And I think it all ties in, Microsoft's October announcement, that they kind of spoiled, right?
Yep.
So what happened here?
Well, we think so. We actually don't know what they're going to announce in October, and so we had assumed that what it was going to be was Surface Pro LTE. Like it will be available on December 1st. It will be in these configurations.
Which we mentioned last week, and I think you mentioned on Windows Weekly the week prior.
Yeah. So what we've learned now is, well, I should say what happened was that a couple of people from Microsoft at Ignite mentioned the December 1st date. I think they might have even mentioned the configurations. And we found out later that those guys had a little speaking to, and I guess they weren't supposed to reveal that. So I think they will and had already always intended to talk about the stuff in October. But now we're kind of wondering if maybe there'll be something else that will be announced at that time. But we don't know anything about that.
Yeah. So LTE on these Surface Books, is it on these Surface devices? Where I'm assuming it's going to be Surface Pro, right?
It is Surface Pro. Yeah.
We're not talking like Surface Laptop or Surface.
No, but actually, there was a slide for an always connected PC. I don't know if it was a session or part of a session, and it showed a photo of a Surface Laptop, leading to speculation that maybe Surface Laptop will also be available with built-in. It'll probably be like an eSIM. I'm not sure how they're doing it exactly, but if it's always connected PC, it'd be eSIM. So, they should have this capability across all of their devices.
Well, okay, so this brings up an interesting discussion that I had with someone. We were talking about, always connected devices, and, I had a bizarre experience the other day where I was on the go. I was coming home from the city, and I had like a work emergency happen, and at the very moment, I needed to get online with my laptop. Okay, so you're going to say, okay, this is easy enough, right? How do you do it? You connect to, I guess you could tether, you do the hotspot on your phone and you connect to the computer. For whatever reason, on this specific phone, I just had a plethora of issues getting the hotspot to work. It just wasn't working right. I could get it to work on my Android device, but I had like 10% battery, but I couldn't get it to work on this. And at that moment, I thought, I know that this is redundant and it's kind of going backwards, but why can't I just have LTE built into my laptop? Every laptop should have LTE.
I don't think that's the primary reason. I think this is mostly named, obviously there are individuals who want this, but I think this is mostly aimed at corporations who give out these laptops to their employees. And the idea is that you're going to be online all the time. And on the road, maybe, yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to separate the cost of that from your personal cell phone plan.
Absolutely.
So, that's one of the issues with tethering, unless you're, obviously, unless you're given a smartphone from work. But, for a lot of companies, it might make sense just to kind of include that in. So I think that's the primary use case. Most individuals wouldn't want to have a separate smartphone, or like a bandwidth, what do you call it? Like a data plan.
Would or would not?
Wouldn't,
yeah.
Because of the cost.
Yeah.
In other words, to an individual, it's like I'm basically on an unlimited plan. So whatever, I can tether it and I can plug it into the laptop while I'm tethering it and it charges it. And, that will be enough. But I think this is for, some people will want it, obviously, but I think this is for businesses that need to, want to have those things separate.
Yeah, I think it's necessary to keep it separate. For my job, what we did actually, it was my idea. We give out these iPads to everybody for various reasons. So I upgraded all of them and I put an LTE chip in all of them. I just ordered the thing and I added it to the corporate account, and nobody's complaining about how they can't get online anymore. That was a big excuse that we had. I can't do it. I don't have internet where I'm at right now.
Right.
My internet went out, or this went out, or the bar that I'm at doesn't have a Wi-Fi connection. So I was tired of hearing that. So I just put in LTE in all their unlimited plan and all their iPads, and guess what? Nobody's complaining anymore. Everything's getting done. So I think for a corporate thing, this is extremely beneficial to know. If let's say sales, you're deploying all these people out to do stuff, you kind of want them connected.
Yeah, sure. The problem from the Microsoft perspective is that they don't sell enough of these devices to put this everywhere, right? And so, even on the Apple side, like when you buy an iPad, you can choose between Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi plus cellular, and you pay a little bit extra to get the latter version. That will be the case of Microsoft as well. But because it's Microsoft, not Apple, you're not going to get every single memory choice. You're not going to get it, in PC's case, you don't have all of the different processor choices and whatever. So it's a little limiting. And the thing I'd like to see with eSIM in particular is this should just be in the device. If you don't use it, you don't use it. This thing can't add more than single-digit dollars to the cost of the machine. Just put it in the damn machine and let people enable it or not enable it based on their needs. But that's not what they're doing.
What has been the argument to? I know that there are some laptops on the market that have some, LTE connection, but why hasn't this been a takeoff point? Once we hit unlimited plans with high-speed LTE, I'm literally getting, most of the time, I could probably do a speed test now and find out, but I'm probably getting like 60 megabits on this phone with LTE. So why haven't more companies kind of deployed this and kind of gone to this level with it?
I just think it's a complexity and cost thing. And by the way, I'm not 100. I don't think eSIM actually makes it any less. Well, it makes it tons less complex on companies or individuals or whatever. But it's funny when Microsoft ships Surface devices that don't have this, people complain. And they've only actually ever shipped one Surface that had any kind of cellular connectivity. That was the Surface 3, which was kind of a weird choice because it was such a woefully underpowered machine anyway. So honestly, they'll do this, and I think it'll be kind of a minority of devices will even have this capability. I don't think it's going to be anything that puts Surface over the top, but you can get cellular connectivity in PCs today. I don't think it's a volume thing, but I do think it's important for certain businesses or for certain segments of businesses, like you said, traveling, Salesforce or Workforce, whatever.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think the whole thing is fascinating that this is when they're going. I think this is a great step for them and for enterprise use, you know.
Yep.
My opinion, as someone that has deployed this in his company, you know, LTE on all these iPads, they really are competing with the iPad Pro at this point. In that sense, because I'm going to tell you something. If I had an option, if this is a priority for my company, and I have a Surface device without LTE, and that, or I could get an iPad with LTE, you know, an iPad Pro with a keyboard, I might just go with the iPad Pro.
I mean, I hope that's not how people are making decisions, you know, to be honest.
I'm just simplifying it down to just.
Yeah, no, I get it. But I mean, you either need a PC or you don't. And if you need a PC and you need connectivity, it seems like tethering in some way will work. If you know, that's still better for, you know, than having to go to an iPad, unless you could in fact use an iPad to get work done, I guess.
Yeah. Listen, I see crazy things every day.
Yeah. No, I do too.
It's interesting. I'm curious to see what devices they're going to deploy this in. You know, they may have a good advantage if the next lineup of all the Surface devices, you know, Surface laptop, all these things are always connected, and they have an eSIM in it.
You're giving Microsoft way too much credit. They're never going to do this everywhere.
I'm hopeful.
So
I'm hopeful.
we'll see.
I'm hopeful. Maybe we'll leave it up.
I wouldn't count on that.
Maybe we should leave it to another company. Maybe HP or Dell could start doing it, and we could see.
Well, I mean, but just to put it in perspective, like I said, even Apple doesn't do it. So Apple does not offer this in their Macs. And they offer specific configurations of iPads that have this. Yeah. So you can still, most iPads get sold without it. You know, so Microsoft will never do that. I wish they would. But
so talking about Apple, I don't know if you've seen the backlash I've received over
what?
What
have you done?
Well, I criticized Apple, and that's a big no-no, right? You're not allowed to do that. As an Apple user, as a Mac user, as an iPhone user, as an iPad user, I guess you are not. You have to follow blindly and totally ignore all the problems.
Andrew, please be specific. What have you done?
So I posted a picture on Twitter. I'm having a terrible time. I'm having like an endless amount of UI issues on this thing with the latest iOS, where so you know the notifications will somehow get blended in with the home screen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like you can see the icons behind it?
I could actually see the notification behind my icons.
Really?
Yeah, so it almost becomes like it's my background. So I actually posted this picture on Twitter. You guys could, if you follow me at Andrews Aaron, we could pull it up. Where it just gets jumbled. So let me see, Paul, if you go to my Twitter, it's from a couple days ago. I did it about 6 days ago. So the notification bar goes to your background, and it's almost like it's a background image.
Yeah, I've not seen that.
And I wrote, holy F, iOS 11, get your S together. Because I had a terrible time with this. And people started attacking me that it's a fake image, that all I did was take a screenshot of my background and put it as the background.
Of course.
And I just, like, it was like endless. It was like an endless array of messages I started getting. People like, you're an a-hole, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. Can you imagine?
I post, I can't remember what it was, some Microsoft screen, and someone's like, you Photoshop that. It's like, yes, that's what I do. I post fake things so I can make fun of Microsoft.
Yeah. Well,
this is the level of discourse on Twitter these days.
Yeah,
so.
I just couldn't believe it. But I have a lot of issues with iOS 11, which I'm very surprised at, because when I was on the beta, I had 0 issues, and then with GM, I have all these problems. Which is, I
don't think I've had problems.
You haven't had any UI issues?
No, not like that. Certainly. Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah. iPhone 10 is a lot of issues with this thing, huh? Already. They're having production problems.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to know. It's not even out, so it's hard to know.
I was going to do the Apple does things the right way kind of comment here about how they wouldn't dare release this face recognition thing without it being, functioning. Without it working really well, considering how unbelievable Touch ID is. And now I'm thinking, oh my God, they may totally drop the ball with this thing. I can't even think about what a disaster this would be if the face recognition software does not work right for Face ID.
Right.
I mean, this is like not a make or break, because this is not going to break Apple, but
I need to know how well this works before I would even consider buying this thing.
I know. That's my whole point. And I keep telling people this. I go, listen, this is a first-gen device. This is the first time Apple has attempted this. They don't attempt this on their laptops. You know, Touch ID is a little bit more... I could see how they got Touch ID so right from the first time they attempted it. Because nobody was doing it like this at this level. But face recognition software on any of these devices, look at Samsung, I mean, Windows Hello works well, right? But Windows Hello works a little bit differently.
I don't believe Windows Hello does work well.
You don't think
facial
so?
Thing? No, I don't like it.
Okay. I mean, it's worked for me when I've used it, but...
And everyone will, I get different people who will tell me different things on that, and I don't, whatever. I've tried it a million times. I don't like it. And it worked particularly bad on the phone, which is one of the many reasons I'm nervous about it. It works terrible on the Samsung devices, facial recognition. So we will see.
Yeah, I keep telling people, let's wait and see how this works in the real world.
Yep.
I don't know how well it's going to work. Well, I have a bunch more stuff. I want to talk about this Amazon announcement from yesterday that snuck up, which is really cool. But I want to remind everybody should go to Thurrott.com right now.
Right now.
Actually, do not go to Thurrott.com right now. Wait. Actually, open up another tab and go to Thurrott.com right now. You guys have a premium service, Thurrott Premium. You can become a Thurrott Premium and enjoy more news from the sources you trust. And that source is Paul and Brad. I trust Brad. Sometimes, Brad, I trust more than you. He's much nicer. I do too. You get full access to the content on Thurrott.com. You get access to First Ring Daily, and a podcast featuring Paul and Brad, which is on every day, almost every day. Premium forums, Thurrott Daily newsletter, premium comments, enhanced user experience, and I'm sure more that's coming down the line. You have a choice of either $64 for the year, or you could pay $7 a month. And I highly recommend you guys do this. Go to Thurrott.com and sign up for a premium service right there. Let's talk about Amazon. So, they just announced a new Fire TV, right?
Yes.
Like an hour ago, right? When did they announce it?
Yesterday.
The Fire TV? Yes, yesterday. Yes, I'm so sorry. Wow. You know what?
Still yesterday.
I'm going to tell you something. I'm reading this story. I'm reading the Fire TV stuff. And I'm seeing someone just posted. This is what happens when you read on the go. It says, just announced new Fire TVs. I'm like, ooh, I missed something yesterday.
Yep.
So they announced a whole wide range of products. Some stupid,
Sure. Well, I don't know. Stupid is a tough term, but
the Echo button. What do you think of that?
The Echo button. Well, actually, it's kind of hard to say because we don't really. That's the one we know the least about. But that looks like it's kind of a niche-y, soon to be gone, kind of stupid thing. It's just for like games, like group games. Where you can press the buzzer and before anyone else or whatever, and that's probably the least interesting of all that stuff.
I'm going to go down the list of this because Amazon is really investing in this in the Echo environment, right? Like this is their thing now. They announced new, smaller second-gen Echo speakers for $99, which I actually like. They look pretty. Yep. They announced that. They announced the Echo Connect speakerphone that connects to your POTS line in your house. Or
to your VoIP.
Or your VoIP. Yeah, it's standard.
By the way, it's a good idea. Amazon Google offers this through Google Home, hands-free phone calling. So that's what that is. It's good.
They announced the Echo button for games. They announced the Echo Spot smart speaker with a rounded screen. So it's like a weird combination device, right? It's a dot and it's the they're like voice, their video conferencing device.
I think it's like a smart alarm clock, basically.
So technically it is, but you could do video. You could do calls and you could do video stuff.
Yeah, hands-free voice and video call. Yeah, because it is a screen. Sure.
God, they are really banking on the holiday season with these devices, right? $129 for that. Then they announced an official Ethernet adapter for the Fire Stick and all new 4K HDR Fire TV.
Yeah. By the way, the new Fire TV appears to be a replacement for both the Fire TV and the Fire TV Stick.
Yes, it's
because it kind of dangles off the the HDMI.
So I had initially heard that you were going to have a bigger device, a bigger Fire TV.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? They were showing like FCC sketches about this new Fire TV that's bigger and with more horsepower and for gaming.
This one device actually leaked ahead of time. Like I've already seen this design, like the square dangling thing.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be just an entry-level Fire TV. So this Fire TV with 4K and HDR, $70. Yeah,
60 frames a second too, which is one of the big complaints. Excuse me. So I'm actually going to get one of these. I'd kind of written off Fire TV. I know it's your favorite.
It is.
But this one, it's cheap. That's a good price. I mean, the Google Chromecast Ultra is $70, and that's also a little dangler, but it doesn't have a remote control.
Yeah.
Right? Or a UI. You don't have to bring it up. Well, it does have a UI. I'm sorry, but typically what you do is you just cast to it, so you use the UI on your phone. But I really like having a hardware remote. So I mean, that alone it makes it pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm very interested in this. I have an Apple TV in the living room and I have a Fire TV in my bedroom, and it was the opposite. I tend to watch more TV in my bedroom than I do in the living room. And I had the original Apple TV, how many gens that they had this, and it was fine. Sure. It was fine for what it was. And when I got the Fire TV, it was miles ahead. The UI was old and outdated for the Apple TV, and they caught on with this latest one. But there's just so many weird UI things. And one thing that baffles me is with the Apple TV, and if you guys are in the market right now for this, I highly recommend you listen to my rant about this Apple TV. So they have a YouTube app, obviously, right? Everybody does. Do you know in that YouTube app, you cannot subscribe or watch more videos from a specific person? So if I go to Thurot's channel and
you can't subscribe.
It's the first time I saw it, I can't subscribe and I can't watch more of your videos. I can only do that if I'm subscribed already. It's kind of a half-assed experience if you think about it.
Sure.
Because I like to go down that.
There must be a reason for that.
Yeah, I like to go down that rabbit hole. Like I find a video from someone that I like, I'm like, oh, I want to see what else they have. It kind of doesn't. It kind of prevents you from doing that. On the Fire TV, obviously, it's a full experience. And that's a baffling thing. And I don't necessarily blame Apple for that. It could be it could kind of be a Google thing or a YouTube thing where they don't want to allow your the full experience on that device. Because they want you to buy.
If we don't know, we shouldn't speculate. But I would say
you would say that might be Apple.
No, if I were forced to guess, I would say that Apple requires a 30% VIG on every sale that anyone makes on their systems, and that there are YouTube channels that have payments involved or are only part of YouTube Red or YouTube whatever you pay for, and it has something to do with that, but that's just a guess. I literally have no idea.
That's a fascinating theory. I don't know. I don't know. Regardless, you can't subscribe.
Yeah, that's weird.
And I've asked, and I thought I was.
It's not Apple's fault. I mean, it's not Apple's fault directly, right? I mean, it might be the 30% thing, but it's not like Apple TV doesn't have a feature that would enable this. I mean, it's YouTube or Google didn't do it.
Yeah, so I don't know. I find that as a major turnoff for me when it comes to this device. But
yeah, well, the remote is the major turnoff for me, and
that remote is poison, Paul.
Well, I was I was away this week at Ignite, as you noted, and I talked to my wife each day, and I think it was yesterday. She says, she goes, last night I tried to watch TV, and we've been using PlayStation View over the Apple TV, and I use the remote, and she sees me frustrated by it, but she's never actually used it. And she said, how do you use this thing? She said, I literally couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And she never got it going. She never found the show. She was never able to do it. And she later was able to watch it on Hulu, some new show or some new season of some new show, whatever it was. And so I said, I know. I said, that top thing where you swipe it is really difficult to use, especially. And she says, swipe it. I'm not even talking about that. I couldn't even select anything or whatever. And I'm like, no, you have to swipe it. That's why. And she's like, that's the most ridiculous remote I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, well, thank you. You understand why I've been complaining about it.
Yeah, my wife absolutely hates it too. Other than the Fire TVs, out of the Amazon products that they announced, is there anything that really stood out to you?
Well, I mean, generally just that they're expanding the lineup of Alexa-powered devices so dramatically. I think that's very interesting. Also that they are starting to respond to the competition. You mentioned the hands-free calling stuff. is something that Google already offers. They're responding to that. The new Echo and Echo Pro or Plus, whatever it's called, both have dramatically better speakers and far-field microphones, something that Apple is promising for the HomePod. And so they're starting to see what the competitors are doing, and they're trying to remain a step ahead. And I think that's smart. And so the one thing, well, actually, there are many things that Amazon has over the competition. Obviously, the sheer number of skills that Alexa has and all that is very important. That's a big differentiator. But the other one is Amazon is like the crazy Eddie of the internet, and they lowball on prices for everything. You know, I often complain, like with Google and their phones, like sometimes they're cheap and sometimes they're not. Apple products are always too expensive. Amazon products are always they're just reasonably priced. I mean, I guess there are a couple of examples where that's not the case. Some of the like the high-end Kindle Oasis stuff is kind of expensive, and they do have a couple of expensive things. But you know, for the most part, if you want to stay in that ecosystem, and especially if you subscribe to Prime and you get all these additional services for free on the digital side, I mean, it's kind of the place to be.
Yeah.
If you're not rolling around on a bed of cash every night, it's a very affordable ecosystem to be in. It's kind of interesting.
So I'm just curious about how these the Alexa family of devices is going to continue doing over the next couple of years. Is this something that we will continue purchasing, or will this be, you know, when we look back at this decade of bizarre devices that we all started buying, will this be one of those? Will this be the netbook for it? I don't know. You know,
no, actually, it's funny. Microsoft, who will never have any share in this market, referred to these things as ambient devices. That's the first time I've ever heard that phrase. And as I talk to people at Ignite, it's the first time anyone's heard that phrase. But it makes sense, right? You and I have talked about ambient computing a lot, this notion that I could sit down on a plane and maybe talk to the interface that's built into the back of the seat, or I press my finger down and I log in and I get access to all my stuff. I mean, this notion that things will be everywhere. Those things will always have to be sensors of devices of some kind. But until we get that stuff everywhere in the world and there's some kind of a standard for it or whatever, the way you do it is with these like devices. And, you know, they start out kind of big and clunky. The first Amazon Echo was like this big cone thing. Now they're starting to get smaller. They're starting to have better sound quality. They're starting to integrate better into the home, thanks just to, you know, better designs. And we're going to see eventually, in the same way that smart controls come to a home where you have switches built into the wall that fit into that same little enclosure that the dumb switches of the past fit into, you will have that stuff will be built into those. And as you walk around your house, or built into whatever, you know, you can talk to the air, and you won't care that the microphone that's listening to you or the speaker that's responding to you is, you know, there, where it won't matter. They'll be everywhere. You know, obviously built into your phone. If, you know, now that we have these devices that will be built into computers, they'll be built into cars, they'll be built into smart appliances. And, you know, the goal is to get your platform pervasive out in the world. And right now, Amazon's got a nice lead. And this is them trying to, you know, keep that going. Because eventually, yes, those standalone consumer devices that you see are going to go away. But they'll be built into other things that we kind of need, you know, TV sets and speakers and, you know, whatever.
The reason why I ask is because we always discuss tech maturity and tech immaturity, right? And you know, this concept of always connected and always listening. Is this are we gonna look back in 20, 30 years and say, oh my God, what were we thinking? We had all these devices that were constantly hearing us and listening to us.
No. You know, do you look back on a like a phone booth on the streets of New York in the 1970s, or on a rotary phone that gave way to a keypad phone that, you know, with a long dangly curly cable that used to get tangled up all the time? I mean, we don't look back on that stuff and make fun of it. We understand that those things had to happen first. You know, you remember the first cell phones were these giant things that looked like World War II field phones. And then they had, you know, car phones that actually had physical tethers to the car. And now we have, you know, we have these little tiny phones now. And I mean, we have bigger phones too, but they're completely always connected, wireless, you know, untethered, whatever. That's the progression. So it's this stuff. The roots of, well, how do I say this? The stuff we have now is not old-timey yet enough for us to kind of make fun of it. You know, it's like a generation from now, there will be the then modern version of what we do now. Like we show someone a cassette tape and we say, what do you think this thing's for? And my kids might have no idea. Your
Yeah.
kids certainly will have no
Most
idea.
likely, yeah.
And so when you think forward to like our kids' kids, our grandkids, you show them like an Amazon Echo or something and say, "What do you think this thing is?" And they, looks like something you would put flowers in. It's a tissue box. They won't know what it is. But when you say, "Oh, this is how we used to talk to the thing," they'll say, "Oh yeah, we talk to the thing all the time." Whatever the thing is called. They just don't see it because now it's just built into stuff. That's how I view it, anyway.
I had a big problem here. I dropped my earbud, and I lost the little piece that goes in it. So I couldn't hear you for about 30 seconds.
Well, I can assure you that whatever I said was insightful and correct.
No, I heard most of it. No, listen. You are absolutely right in this sense. It's not the device, it's the technology. But it is amazing to think, when even 20 years ago, the house of the future, right? Sure. It is kind of becoming the house of the future with all these always connected devices. I turn my lights on from my phone and I could say, I want this level of white. I want, 5600 compared to 2700, and I could adjust it from my phone. I think that's an amazing concept, and it's a great extension of what the home of the future is going to be like.
The transition is we're going to go down little wrong roads, or little dead ends, or whatever it is. Or, the hotel I just stayed in Florida was actually a really nice hotel, beautiful big room, plenty of plugs, for electronics and stuff. And they had this big, I don't know what it was, what the brand was, like iHome or something, but kind of a big stereo alarm clock thing with a dock on the front of it for the old style of iPhone, right? Pre-lightning plug.
Yeah.
And that thing's not that old, right? 4 or 5 years at most, something like that. But it's ancient now, right? Like that's obsolete. Yeah. And that's the nature of the era that we're in right now, because that's how fast things are moving.
Yeah, things are moving fast and things are getting outdated and
yeah, and you place your bets as a consumer. Today's sure thing may end up losing. We really don't know. So we're all placing bets here and there. But the nice thing about some of this stuff, like ambient computing, like we've been talking about, is really just the means to an end. And so it's the back end services that matter. It's the capabilities that matter. And unlike with things like I chose a PC or a Mac, or I chose an iPhone or an Android phone.
Yeah,
I actually think the process of moving between those smart assistants is going to be a lot easier than those other technological generations. I picked a particular set of smart home devices for my house. Like I use Philips Hue lighting, and I might use, smart switches of some kind. I might use a security thing of some kind. I might have cameras, which I guess would also be security or motion alarms or whatever they are. Those could all be different little ecosystems, but one of the things that they all have in common is I could use them with Amazon Echo. I could use them with Google Home. I could use them with Apple HomeKit or Siri or whatever. They'll work with everything.
Yeah, and they'll continue to work.
But that's one of the things that's nice about this, right? It's, if you bought Microsoft Word for Windows back in 1995, well, that wasn't going to work with the Mac if you decided to go that way. And if you buy an app on the iOS or whatever, and you decide to go to Android, well, you don't just get that thing for free because you used to own it over there. So this is one of those things where this kind of works out. There are other examples of this in technology, like if you bought digital music after they got DRM, that works everywhere. That's really nice. But if you bought digital music, movies from somewhere, guess what? You're stuck with that ecosystem.
Yeah.
For the most part. I know there's some sharing things like Disney has, but if I have a couple hundred movies in my iTunes collection
from Sony, if you have like Sony.
Well, I mean, or wherever. I mean, the point is they're not playing on the Amazon device. That's just never going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting transition, and you're right. We're in this weird position right now where things are moving so fast. Where 10 years from now, I mean, it's crazy to think 10 years ago, 2007. What kind of computerized world were we in? People were just starting to get. I mean, flat screens were just getting popular in people's homes, right?
Andrew, Windows Vista was new.
Windows Vista was brand new. You know, that was one of the worst years of my life. 2007. I lost everything that I ever had on 2 redundant raids. I had a big problem in my house, and we had the power go out like 6-7 times, and there was a problem with the outlet, and it fried the computer. But once the computer was fried, it also something happened with those hard drives where I was never able to get it back, and I lost like everything that I had ever taken a picture of and written and everything. So after that, I learned my lesson and I put everything in the cloud. But I mean, very interesting time, right? Look at the conversation I just had. Redundancy and raids, and nobody's doing. I mean, when I say nobody, I mean most people. Right? most people aren't doing that at all. And if you are, there's many other solutions as to making your life a little bit simpler.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the last 10 years, iPhones had just gotten announced. 90% of people didn't have an iPhone. They didn't even think about getting an iPhone.
A lot of them were dead set against getting an iPhone.
What were we using for home automation? X10, right? Was X10 still the standard?
Well, yeah, but what that meant was no one was doing it.
You know what? I'm going to tell you. When my first computer was a Tandy, but after that, my parents bought. I think when I was in middle school, they bought me an IBM Aptiva, and they got. Do you remember the Aptiva, the Stealth Aptiva? It was black and it had like a secondary piece. Like
I remember the brand because I think they sold them at Sears, but I don't.
Radio Shack.
Okay. Yeah,
Sears
it must
also
have been their retail thing.
But they had an IBM Aptiva, and they had the tower, but the CD drive and the floppy disk were not in the tower.
Oh, yeah.
There was a separate piece that went underneath the monitor, and your monitor didn't connect to the computer either. It connected to this breakout. So it had the CD drive, it had an audio breakout, it had a floppy drive, and the monitor connected. So it was actually really cool if you looked at it. Because you had this giant CRT.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, you had this giant CRT, and it was flat CRT with these 2 huge black speakers on the side and this weird pop-up thing underneath that you used to push. But when I got that, it came with the X10. It came with like a whole kit. It was like a $500 kit to do X10 in your house for automation. I set up my entire bedroom so I could control the lights with my computer, and people were blown away by it. Yeah. And look how simple it is now.
Back then, that was futuristic.
20 years later, 20 years later, we're talking to a box this big.
Sure.
And it's doing everything. I mean, we are really...
As soon as we start having conversations like this, that's just like saying that we're old.
No, I guess so, right? I'm, two kids, 2 jobs, a mortgage, and a car payment. Yeah, I am old.
In 1985, I was driving down the highway in my boss's truck. He owned a construction company, and the phone rang.
In the car.
Which in 1985 was a miracle. And so I looked down, and it's the phone. There's a phone in his car, and it's ringing. So I picked it up, and I'm driving down the highway. I said, hello. It was my boss. He said, Paul, this is Bob. Why the F did you just pick up my phone? And I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, every time you pick that thing up, it costs me 75 cents just to pick it up.
Why'd he call?
Because he wanted to tell me something. So he was like, listen, whatever it was, I don't remember. But he said, don't ever pick this thing up again. And I was like, okay. But as I'm having this call, this car's driving by me with these 2 little girls in the back seat. And they're both like up against the glass, looking at the man from the future talking on the phone.
The man from the future, the crazy guy.
I'm telling you, in 1985.
Yeah.
That was not a thing. I mean, it was for a few doctors and things, but it was very expensive.
I remember when the Gulf War broke out. My father was really into, my father's like a military guy, so he's into planes and all that stuff. And I remember he was on the computer and he goes, oh my God, we just went to war. And it was like a good 10 minutes before CNN reported it.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I was a kid, right? You're talking 1990, right? Or so. 1989, 1990. My father, and I kept thinking, I'm like, oh my God, how did he know before it was on TV?
Right.
And that's
from the future.
He got it from the future. It's amazing. Sure. I mean, listen, we talk about technology and we rag on the iPhone, but or whatever device, but these are unbelievable. I mean,
ultimately, what we're doing is navel gazing. I mean, we're talking, we're at such a level of awesome capability now that we can just like we can make fun of Apple because there's a notch on their phone, you know. And the question is, we were asking earlier was kind of like, will facial recognition work well? We know it's going to work. Will it work really well? Will it be seamless? Can you imagine going back 10 years and telling someone about facial recognition and how it's going to be working to such a degree that we're going to be debating whether or not this will be better than using like a fingerprint ID or a, you know, they would think we were talking about some Star Trek episode. Yeah. Like it's ludicrous.
I could see the CBS, you know, Sunday morning. I could see them doing like from 20-something years ago. This is what they call an iPhone. This is the phone of the future.
Sure.
Steve Jobs of Apple has been working on this.
You could read Isaac Asimov or Larry Niven or Jerry Pournelle back in the 1970s or actually maybe as far back as the 50s and in some of those cases. And they had things that were like iPads and iPhones and whatever. I mean, they envisioned this future.
So this is a good question for you because you're a big Asimov fan and so am I. So the things that Asimov wrote about, right, like iPads or cell phones or things like that.
Right. He did have some iPad type stuff.
I mean, we're talking, you know, 40 years, 50 years.
The Asimov stuff probably goes back to the 1950s, actually. Okay. So I mean, that's
so from the time of real reality. Yeah, so 60 years, let's say.
But you know, look, science fiction writers have been doing this forever. H.G. Wells. Who's the guy? 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is someone else. I can't remember. I'm sorry. A lot of these guys, the kind of old timey science fiction writers from back in the day, or even like Sherlock Holmes.
Jules Verne, by the way.
Jules Verne.
I looked it up.
The forensic stuff or whatever. I mean, there's always been great minds sort of predicting what the future will look like. There's also the kind of retro quality of movies or books or whatever, where when they don't get it right, how ludicrous it works, or looks like. One of the things that is kind of amusing to look at because it's not that old is the movie version, the Minority Report movie with Tom Cruise is often held up as a very plausible look at the future world and what it could be like, except for one thing. There's the great scene where they're multi-touching up on the screen and moving stuff around. You're like, look, they envisioned the future. And then the guy says, can you give me the data that you have over there so I can look it over? And he goes, yep. And he plugs in the thing and he pulls it out. He hands the guy the thing and he plugs it in over here. It's like, you're telling me that he couldn't swipe that thing across the room through the air?
Yeah.
They didn't have Wi-Fi. They had multi-touch, whatever on glass.
Yeah, they didn't have, you couldn't iMessage.
I mean, it's just, when you look at that kind of thing and you're aware of what really happened. I mean, even at the time, I think it was a lot of date. It's weird because it's so good in some ways. And then it kind of falls flat, in other ways.
So, but here's my question to you. The things that Asimov and Jules Verne and all these people envisioned, they're technologists, they're futurists more than anything else.
Yeah, sure.
What is our development of technology? Is it responding to the fact that they envisioned these things, or is this just the just the evolution of technology? I mean, right. Because I always think about it. How do you envision an iPad? In 1954, how do you envision the concept of this? That this device. I mean, first of all, these are extremely brilliant, talented people, and they were leaps and bounds ahead of their time, even with their writing skill. But
the thing you have to understand is, like, in a lot of cases, they didn't really envision the technologies that would have to happen for that stuff to work, right? Even my son is a small child, very small child. I remember him saying, they need to invent something where you can ask it a question, and no matter what it is, it can answer it. And I said, Mark, you just invented Google. Yeah. That already existed, right? He didn't know. He was just a little kid. So some of these things, it's like you can kind of imagine these conveniences. You can also kind of imagine the net result of certain conveniences. Like I always talk about McDonald's and how horrible McDonald's has been for mankind, and yet McDonald's was invented as a great convenience. It was a great idea. Yeah. It was a great idea of its era, too. Yeah. Remember that restaurant experiences that day were sit-down affairs where you'd go in and spend a lot of time, and that's what it was. And their idea was like, look, it's the 1960s, people or 50s even, people are in cars. We need to build something that makes sense for people who are in cars.
Yeah.
And it started out as a convenience. Nobody was trying to hurt anybody, and Isaac Asimov in particular wrote about things like that, like even for the time that he would have written a story, I don't remember when this one was written, 60s or 70s or something, but you envision this gigantic planet that only has 5 people living on it, and they all live hundreds of thousands of miles apart in these giant mansions, and they can't carry their own body weight, so they float around on these electronic vehicles and they communicate with each other on these giant screens through what is essentially Skype.
Yeah.
And that's the society. And that's an interesting, I don't know if that's futurism, but it's, you kind of look at the way the world is and you say, well, taken to an extreme, where could this be going? And that's, it's kind of an interesting possible outcome. They did it again. What's that Disney movie? Wall-E had a kind of a cartoonist take on what I just described, but that's from Isaac Asimov.
Yeah, I mean, Asimov's story is really fascinating. Have you read his life story?
Oh yeah. He's amazing himself. Yeah,
I mean, just the whole thing about how he got AIDS in 1983 from he had a blood transfusion, right? He had a heart problem.
Okay.
Oh, what's happening here? Did you see that?
Yeah, that's the aliens invading.
That's the Matrix, guys. That was a glitch.
You said too much.
I said too much. All right, we'll stop talking about Asimov here for a second. That is so weird that it's doing that. That's funny. Really quickly, can we go over the details for Windows 10s first line workers?
Yeah,
first line workers. I imagine like people on the docks. Those are the first line workers. Yeah,
that's not what they are.
Yeah, so Fat Tony and his union guys, getting up early.
Right. So, no, those are the dock line workers.
Okay, dock line, not first line.
No, Microsoft coined. I don't know that they coined this term, but this is the first time we've heard it from Microsoft, and so this is a segment of the workforce that are the people who deal with your customers directly. So you could imagine like retail workers. Is just an obvious example. They're the people who someone comes in and they want to buy something, they want customer service, you're the face of the brand. Their experience with you is going to determine how they feel about your company. They're first line workers, so they're important, right? And oftentimes those guys are the ones who don't get paid, the most by far. If you think about retail environments or other situations where you might have a person like that, the computers they might use, aside from like registers and things, are the types of computers where you would be looking up stuff. Like we went into IKEA, you want to buy something, some guy goes to the computer, types in the code for the thing, looks it up, tells you if you can get it and where you get it, and blah, 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 and prints stuff out. That thing is a computer, obviously. It's running Windows something, and it's got some application running on it. But what it really is a kiosk, because even though it's Windows, and even though it could probably run games and browse the web and all this other stuff, what the employer wants is to lock that thing down so it doesn't do that stuff. So Microsoft has created a version of their Microsoft 365 service, which is Office 365 plus some other stuff, for these types of customers, their enterprise customer businesses. And they've created, or they're working with PC makers to create Windows 10s based PCs for those types of workers. So again, if you could imagine a retail situation, rather than have someone have to go and find a computer, walk up to it and type on it, these guys could have a laptop that they carry around with them in this case. A tablet might be better, but we're dealing with laptops today. And it's running Windows 10s. And so it's an expansion of Windows 10s from education into the enterprise, sort of like, that this little kind of niche part of the enterprise. And you can make a pretty good argument that this is maybe an example of Windows 10s does make a bit of sense.
Yeah.
Because you can lock it down a little bit better. I actually still think that Windows 10 Pro would be better in this situation, and that the way to handle this is to install the apps that these people need
and lock it down.
Lock it down otherwise.
Yeah.
There are controls in Windows that will prevent users from downloading apps. We had
discussed this, and you said that the way that you were theorizing how to make this work would be a little difficult, right?
Yeah, but
the current way
these controls exist. I mean, I'm just saying you could do this, but anyway, they're just expanding Windows 10s to another little niche market.
Yeah. Did you see the devices? What did you think of the devices?
No, but I've only seen the pictures. So the nice thing about these is they're all 14-inch devices,
which I like.
They come with a variety of processor, RAM, storage choices. So they're not like low-end, hardened, like education things for kids. They're actually for human beings and adults and stuff. And so, the price ranges will be from like $275 and up, but I think really what they're going to be is about the mid, like 500s kind of will be more typical.
Yeah.
And, it'll be a decently capable computer.
Yeah, $500 for, Windows 10s.
Yeah.
So are these devices going to be upgraded? Can you upgrade for free, or is that only with the Surface?
No, it's free. Yeah, all Windows 10s can upgrade for free.
Okay, so that's actually
for now,
great.
For the time being.
So you have the HP Stream 14 Pro, starts at $275. Acer Aspire 1, 14-inch Ultra Slim, $299. Acer Swift 1, 13-inch Ultra Slim, $349. And the Lenovo V330 for $349. Those are the ones that we have right now.
But remember, those are starting prices, because those
prices, yeah.
You can actually configure them in some cases with an i3, an i5, or an i7. Different RAM amounts, different storage amounts, and so forth.
Now it comes down to ecosystem. What will the ecosystem look like?
I mean, I hate to keep hammering on Windows 10 S. I get what they're trying to do, but I don't feel that this is going to be successful in any way. It just doesn't make any sense.
I get why you would buy it, right? I get it.
Yes.
But who's going to buy it?
Well, in other words, look, if IKEA, or I almost said Sears isn't a thing. If some retailer, let's just use retailers like
Sears is still a thing, by the way. I have a Sears by me.
All right, don't get distracted. So if some retailer wanted to do this, for it to make sense, the software that their sales associates would need to be available in the Windows Store. Yeah. And that is not the case.
Yeah.
I think ever. So it just doesn't make any sense. I appreciate wanting to lock it down. Like, I get this kind of thing. The other thing I said, and I kind of talked into this a little bit earlier, is if you think about people walking around on a showroom floor at like IKEA or in any retail, like Banana Republic or something, having a laptop is actually not super convenient. What you really need is a tablet.
Absolutely.
And, in those cases, I think an iPad or an Android tablet would probably be more appropriate, and they can be locked down in certain ways as well. And the app ecosystems there are pretty incredible, and on and on we go. So like I said, I get why they're doing it.
Yeah.
I just think realistically speaking, it doesn't make a ton of sense.
I agree with you. Guys, Paul has to go. It's almost that time.
Yes, I do.
Paul has to go. When will I see you next?
I got to look this up. I think I am coming to New York in October.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
But I don't have
but not
the
next
date
week.
off the top of my head. No, I'm going to be away next week.
Are you?
Yes.
For me, so you will not be here with me.
I'm going to be away for everybody.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yes, I am.
Are you running away? Where are you going?
I'm going to Japan.
Oh my God! It's next week.
Yeah. It came up.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see. No, I can't wait. I can't wait for you to get away from me. I can't wait to see your trip.
I know. I can't wait either.
That's awesome. Japan is awesome. So Paul will not be here next week, but I will be here next week with a guest. Maybe it's a good week to have Mike Nash on.
There you go.
You know what? You know what I'll do? Maybe I'll record something with Mike on Tuesday.
He'll be so happy.
He will be happy. I like Mike. Guys, go to our website, gfknetwork.com. Subscribe to the podcast. Also, if you enjoy the show, help us out. Fund us. As little as $1 per episode. Go to patreon.com/whatthetech. You can fund us, $1, whatever you want to give us. And that really helps us going along with the show. And it really encourages us to continue doing what we do. For all things Paul, go to therot.com. You can follow him on at therot You can follow Paul at therot on Twitter. You can follow me at Andrew Zarian on Twitter. And we'll see you all next time. Take care.